You know what? You should like document, get some audio clips during your trip. Like we should make like a spin-off series of Danny goes to Utah for the first
For
time.
the first time.
Mornings are better with a warm beverage, even for Latter-day Saints. Meet Postum, the ideal coffee alternative and proud sponsor of This Week in Mormons podcast. Spotted on the coffee aisle at Smith's Grocery or at your local nearby store. Can't locate it? No worries. Order it at postum.com. Explore delicious recipes to tailor your Postum experience. Start your day off right with Postum.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is another episode of This Week in Mormons International Edition.
Ooh.
I'm Daniel Ferreira, and I'm very happy to be with you today.
And I am Daniel Yañez. Happy to join you, Danny. The Danny's. It's going to be one of those confusing episodes with name.
Yes, yes. Both from Chile also, so that's even more confusing. So it's fine. It's fair. So, Dan, what about your summer in the UK? How is it going?
I think it would be an exaggeration, an overly generous exaggeration to call it summer. It's been super mild.
Really?
We've only had
Okay.
one day that I remember that we have crossed the 30 degrees Celsius barrier, which would be like 85 Fahrenheit
Yeah.
for our American listeners. So yeah, not super exciting, but and lots of rain and like all of the stereotypical kind of bad weather in the UK. Yeah, all of that's been my summer. But out of the few nice days, we've managed to do some fun things. I went to a coastal city in the English Channel called Bournemouth a few weeks ago, and that was quite nice. So
Have you ever been there before, or it
no,
was your first time? Okay, that's great.
first time that I was there, and it was actually a really nice beach. Like when you go south, I remember the first time I went to the English Channel here. My first year, we were like, okay, let's take the train from London to Brighton. Brighton is quite well known, but not as well known to me to know that there's no sand. It's like a pebble.
Oh, that
Beach.
sucks. Yes, it's not the
And
kind of beach you're expecting
yeah,
or
I
used to.
mean,
Yes.
if you know what you're getting into, yeah, at least you go with that frame of mind. But we just took the train, showed up, ready to go to like a normal experience, and we saw that and were like, oh, this is not what I expected. But in Bournemouth, it was quite nice, very like fine sand, really kind of clear sand. Of course, it was a bit cold, like 21, 22 degrees, and the water was maybe like not Mediterranean temperatures by any means, but not Pacific Ocean either. The South
Okay,
Pacific
so it
Ocean,
was
where we live,
okay. It was a middle ground there.
yeah, middle ground. So you could get in. It was good for my thermostat, not for my wife. She's not from Chile, because in Chile the coast is so cold. Like,
Yeah, it's awful. I mean, I think of myself like swimming in this horrible, temperature, and I really enjoyed it. It was the whole day in the water, in the ocean, and I really liked it. But now that I'm older, I mean, I'm just thinking even touching it with my feet is just it gets me the chills. I mean, it gets me cold immediately. So yeah,
you
it's
know
just
what?
the enthusiasm, I would say. Yes.
Yeah, one of my memories is going to this when I was a brand new YSA, which we will be talking about in a second, by the way. I was 18, and we went to this kind of trip, with my ward YSA group, to the El Canelo. This
Okay. Yes. This is central. This is central Chile. This is in the middle of the country. It's close by Santiago. It's an hour and a half driving, maybe an hour. So yeah,
yeah,
it's a
it's a
very
very small town.
typical. Yeah.
It's like a chain of very small coastal towns and beaches, and some are quite nice, because there's like a blend of forest and kind of not mountains, but it's not flat, and the waves are really nice, but the water is so cold. And I have this memory during that activity of getting into the water, spending like 3 to 5 minutes in the water, and feeling my bones like hurting, but I was happy. I was like,
Yes. Yes.
I was
I mean,
just like a
it's
manatee, like
youth.
in the water.
It's the energy of the youth. I would think of it.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that again. Yeah.
Never again. we're sad to tell you that Georgia is not with us today because
Uh,
she's under the weather. She got COVID, and we expect a speedy recovery for her and all the best wishes and energy for her to get well soon. All the best for you, Georgia. We missed you today, but we hope to have you in the future episodes of the international edition.
yeah, get well soon. It would have been nice to have the three of us today, but for our next time. So, Danny, what have you done? What's
I
your
mean,
summer over there?
yes, not much. I'm a PhD student here, so I'm basically working on research and stuff. And we've been fortunate enough to be invited by a family member to go to Utah. So it's going to be my first time, 41 years old, a
What?
lifelong member of the church. So it'll be my first time in the Mecca. So to have I hope to have a wonderful experience
You're
there.
ready for the pilgrimage.
Yes, yes, I'm ready for the pilgrimage, and then yes, the wall and cry on the wall and everything. So I mean, I'm excited. I'm really excited. We're at least we know that as a plan we're going to Science Park, so I'm going to get both the natural beauty and geography of the Utah state, and
Yeah.
also of course as a active member, I would really love to go to one of the temples and go to some of the historical places. So I think it's going to be a wonderful experience, and I hope the weather permits all these possible plans. I've heard that it's been very hot there, and I mean I don't think it's going to be hotter than here, but because it's dry, probably it's going to be
Mm.
heavier or more challenging to deal with it. So, but we're hopeful that it's going to be a good time for the kids as well, for the kids, for the family, and to get together and see friends that we haven't
You,
seen.
you know what? You should like document, get some audio clips during your trip. Like we should make like a spin-off series of Danny goes to Utah for the first
For
time,
the first time.
like a podcast documentary or
That sounds
mockumentary maybe.
fun.
Because yeah,
Yeah.
I had forgotten because I know you've been in the US for around 2 years now, right?
Yes.
And I had kind of assumed that you had gone to Utah at least once, but yeah, I had forgotten that you hadn't. So kind of a first time, like it will be quite the experience. Like I'm looking forward to hearing all about it. Having lived in Utah for around 6 years myself, it would be good to do like a bit of a ping pong review of our
Yeah.
experiences. I've always thought that Utah is a fantastic place to visit, right? Especially if you're a church member and there's so much to see, so much lore, right? And things that you've
Yes.
heard, you've grown up hearing about and knowing people from there. So yeah, I want to hear all
So
about
you
that.
you have to go and see how it's like, how it's really like. Experience it
Comments.
firsthand. Yes.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's really nice, Danny. Should we jump into some articles of news for our
Yes,
this
yes. I
week?
mean, the time we've got lots of articles this week, and we're happy that we have this opportunity to share some of them with you. The first one we think is the biggest for this week is related to the change in ages for the young single adults and the single adults, right? And this is something that, in a way, gets a little bit closer, in a funny way, I would say, but at the same time, I think it's aligning with the times, where people are, dealing with other challenges and more importantly with other kinds of decisions, right? I mean, people decide to study and then maybe to get into graduate school later on, or maybe work a little bit, and then they consider marriage. I don't think that youth today don't consider marriage as something important. I think they're just so concerned to have it right, to make it right, that sometimes this stress or this pressure or simply this nervousness about not making it right will take their time for getting married longer, right? And my personal experience is that although I've been a member of the church my whole life,
Mm.
I got married quite later in comparison to my cohort or my group of friends that are uh, active members of the church. I mean, I was 26, 27 when I got married, and that is considered almost old, right? I mean, I would go to institute activities or young single adults activities, and I would be like the oldest guy in my institute classes, probably the last ones as well. So it is a little bit weird, even a little bit annoying to feel, because maybe no one will tell you that. I mean, but you kind of
I
feel
mean,
that the collagen is
we,
being
we're,
away from your
we're
face.
from the generation that people will tell you something about that.
Yeah, most probably
They
also.
will bring up the Brigham Young quote of being a menace to society and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Yeah, it is a different experience to the one I had. Like I'm a more stereotypical got married young type of case, right? It's less common outside of the US from what I've seen, but it's still kind of prevalent at church. And yeah, I got married at the young age of 21 years old, almost 22. So I kind of bypassed a lot of that YSA experience. And if I'm very, very honest with this particular news, and this shows kind of my potential lack of understanding of the YSA experience, is that I saw the title, like the age changed from 30 to 35. And I was like, why is that even news? Like it took me some time to think, okay, what's the impact of this? Right. And I didn't fully realize it. I don't know. How was it for you when you found out about the news? What's the impact? Let's delve into that a little bit.
I think first of all, it's just you already feel isolated when you're turning 30 and you're not married at church, right? And then that also means that you're cut out of all these programs as well. Like, I mean, you cannot attend to institute anymore, and then any young single adult activities or things
You can't
will
attend institute.
you shouldn't, and people
Okay.
would tell you, so I mean,
Oh,
there
wow.
would be some institute, coordinators and people that would tell you, if you're married you can come with your wife, that kind of thing, right? But generally
Wow.
speaking, by 30 you shouldn't attend, because the program is not kind of for you anymore, kind of thing.
Yeah. Uh,
And I laugh about it because, again, I think it's discretionary at the same time. I mean, some coordinators, some people in the institute buildings will of course welcome
yeah.
anyone that comes, and I think that's the spirit anyways, right? However, right, sometimes, the procedures or the administrative, standards will tell you otherwise, and then people will do whatever they think
But
is
yeah,
best.
even though it can sound a little bit like terrible, I get it. Like if you are, I don't know, in your early 20s and whatnot, and all of a sudden you're surrounded by like late 30s and
People,
people like
yeah.
us now, or early 40s,
Yes, yes,
like who are,
imagine we
who
going
are
to,
these creeps, right? So
yes.
I get it. But I think that leads me to another question I have for you, which is the widening of this age range from 18 now to 35. I mean, 18 and 35 is 17 years apart. And, uh, you know, I wonder how that's going to be felt. Like, will this lead to further kind of sub cohorts within
I
YC
mean,
includes? I have
to
no
be
idea, to be
honest,
honest.
it's obviously that you will have certain groups. I mean, it's only natural, right? I mean, social cliques or groups that build up, depending on preferences, age ranges, similar words or similar stakes. That's common, right? I mean, there's nothing new there, right? What I think is new is just acknowledging that people are not getting married and they're active members of the church, and you want to include them, you want them to be part of the program, or you want them to be surrounded by like-minded, people, and that's only fair. And I think fostering that kind of, interactions, it only makes, well, for for
Mm.
for the for the church youth, or for the church, young single women and men. So again, because I'm not and this is my take, I didn't get married with any of the people that were in my young single adult groups. So that's my first
Yeah,
statement, right? I mean, I didn't find my my
your
loved one, my
eternal
eternal
companion.
companion, whoever you want to call your loved one, right? Your
Hmm.
I didn't find that person in these activities. However, I built up very strong relationships, great friendships, and I'm
Mm.
really happy that I did. I mean, I'm yes, I am more than happy. I feel grateful for knowing these people, and knowing people with different interests, with different preferences, and sometimes I felt like, a fish out of the water, because I mean, they were way different from me, but that didn't mean that we didn't share the same values. And I think being surrounded with this kind of people was great for me and taught me very relevant lessons, and it's been very, very, very significant
Hmm.
for me particularly. Now, that being said, I'm not looking for a program like this as an end goal to marry people, even
Yeah.
though most of people will tell you, well, if it's not the end goal, then it shouldn't exist. What I think is you cannot push those kinds of things. What you can elicit, what you can, foster, is this opportunity for people to get together in a more, open environment where not only church
Yeah.
or doctrine or talks are the core reason why you get together, but for whichever other reason, you get an opportunity on a weekly basis to see these people, to interact with them, again, to build friendships, to build up, opportunities to maybe to find a group of people that have your interests, or maybe they're studying the same as you're studying, or you're interested in studying something, and by interacting with these people you start understanding a little bit more. And then in a way, it's kind of a, I would say, I don't like the word network for this, but in this case, I'm meaning people from different backgrounds, from different circumstances, that get together there because they share the same gospel, and because of it you get a chance firsthand to get to understand a bit more about their stance on things, but also what they do, right? What have been their spiritual experiences, their life experiences, their job experiences, or their university or college or whatever institute, whatever experience they have. And
Yeah.
that's great, because when you're in a ward, what happens if you're the only single adult in a
Mhm.
ward?
It's
Or
probably the reality in most places, right?
so you
Actually,
get the chance
yeah, that makes me
to get that
think.
interaction, right?
That makes me think of, well, this news. I think impacts very differently depending on your geography, because in geographies where single words are prevalent and common, of course this is potentially a big deal. And I like that it's a recognition of marriage being something that people are doing and probably should do in the current world, and how lives are lived, something to be considered to be done, not in a rush. Not There's no rush to get married super young, right? So, and the fact is that people are getting married a bit older, both outside and inside the church. So kind of this age widening is a good recognition of that, of what truly means to be to be young. Right? But I think on the practical, on a practical sense, I think it will impact differently. I'm thinking in our home country, it will be different. I'm thinking of the critical mass of members that exist there compared to Utah, or compared to now here in the UK or other places. That will vary significantly. In some places it will be like, okay, mostly a nominal change, nothing really impactful day to day. But in other places it is a big change, especially on those high concentration areas. And um, I'll love to hear more about it once this kind of gets rolled out, and we start hearing the
We
feedback.
start seeing the
Right.
changes. We start seeing, what are the actual
Yeah,
effects on it
yeah,
after being, applied. Yeah, I totally
yeah.
get it. And I got the letter. So yeah, I was reading about it, and then I just applauded, because I think it's just great. It should do great,
It could, yeah,
again, because you get this interaction, right? And I think those interactions are very relevant in the world we live today, where no one is actually interacting as much as we used to. So I think
yeah.
I just
If
welcome
any
that.
of you listeners are in this group, are affected by this policy change, we would love to hear about your thoughts. Danny and I recognize that we're no longer in that cohort, and therefore we want to hear from those that are. So you can contact us at social media platforms, and we'd love to hear about those.
And there's another related, in a similar vein, right? A related news piece of news article from the Church News about the convention speakers at the Utah area YSA conference,
Oh,
which I want to confess I have no idea that it was happening. I have no idea what is it about. I don't understand why that doesn't happen in South America, or why don't they do it in Chile once a year, or Argentina? I haven't heard of it before. And the only
I
from a very old story that I remember, were the YSA summer conferences, which were, I think, nothing related to this. So can you illuminate me a little bit with it, Danny? Because this is totally off my experience, my knowledge.
Yeah, I wish I could. I do remember from last year. I don't remember if we covered it in one of the international episodes or not, but there was one of these for the first time that included, kind of speakers and things like that, and even like this huge event where they invited One Republic and some other somewhat
Big
famous
bands. Yeah.
or fame adjacent artists
Okay.
from the church and outside the church, and it was this big thing. I remember some commentary, some chatter around how it felt very different from other church events that we are accustomed to. How it felt much more like a mega church type of vibe, which didn't resonate very well with some, and with others it resonated great. They were like, "We need more of this. We need to speak the language that younger people are speaking, and kind of evolve in the ways that we worship or engage socially or spiritually, even, or meta spiritually." I think that was the main precedent. And this year they're doing, I believe, a similar event. There's going to be involvement from a couple of general authorities, and two of our general officers, sister leaders, um, with Sharon Eubank, which currently leads the humanitarian
The
services for the church, and former member of,
Relief
the
Society.
Relief Society presidency. Yeah.
Yes.
Also, Emily Bell Freeman, current Young Women's General President, will be there as well. Elder Pearson, who presides the area in Utah. Can't remember who else, but and on top of that, they're going to have a bunch more of other breakout sessions and things like that, kind of on a convention format. Now, I think to your point of why doesn't this happen elsewhere, I do know of at least one instance where something very similar is done, and that is here in Europe, and it's called it has been called traditionally Nordfest, I believe, and it happens. I can't remember if in Norway or if they change every country, but in kind of the northern Scandinavian countries. Uh, if I recall correctly, this event is somewhat a kind of pattern after what the Europe area was doing over the last few years for a YSA conference, kind of FSY style, but more adult,
For the
young
adults,
adult
for the young adults. Yeah.
focused. Exactly. And I know a few people here from the young adult groups that have gone there, and they've loved it, and so it's a thing. It's relatively established. I don't know if there's an equivalent in other areas that I know of. I haven't heard anything of this scale of production or level, and
I'm in the northeast of the U.S. and I haven't heard a thing. We're
mm,
2 hours and a half from Boston, so we're fairly well located. We're 3 hours and a half from Palmyra. They used to have a pageant there, but no YSA conference. FSY is something that they will do. Even they will do it here in Albany, in one of the venues that is just nearby my church building, and they do it, of course, for the youth, but nothing for the young single adults. So
yeah, it's an
again,
interesting
if you're
one.
doing it in Utah, and this is again my personal take, if you're going to do it in Utah, then why don't you try to have something around the same lines in different areas, right? You have it in the Midwest, you have it, I don't know, in the Northeast, right? And
Yeah,
you put together a bunch of people, a bunch of young single adults, right, that have this opportunity again to get to know each other, to meet for a couple of days, to engage in different activities. And
yeah,
again, meeting people allows you to have this conversation, start to build up relationships, and you know you don't know what happens next. So
yeah.
that's
Building relationships, memories, many things. I think I wouldn't be surprised if it goes in that direction. And the reason I'm thinking that is that is kind of the journey that the FSY conferences went through, originally evolving from the EFY paradigm, right? Especially for youth conferences that took place in the US. I think it was at BYU originally, kind of the brainchild of some leaders like Brad Wilcox. Many love, many don't love as much, as a very prominent voice in kind of Mormon culture, and now a general officer. But eventually, it took decades, right? Those FSY,
Yes,
sorry,
it's
those
true. That's
FSY
true. Yes,
conferences were things that we would hear, like,
those were from the '90s, I would say, right?
yeah. And we,
Yeah.
when I say we, I refer like Latin American members from the 90s and 2000s, like us, would only
Yes.
find out about when we went on missions and we ran into American missionaries and they brought these CDs with
The
music.
CDs. Yes.
And
Yeah.
we're like, oh, that's a really rad CD. That's cool. What
Yeah.
is that? And then you learn that it was not like an album. It was actually like a conference. It's like, wait, what? A
What?
conference?
Yeah.
And they release an album every year. And you go to like a university and what is, whole new world in front of you compared to the, I don't know, more scrappy summer camps that we did with young men or young women
Yeah.
in our state,
Definitely. Yes.
which were
Yes.
great, by the way.
If
I
you
got
dare to
experience
say
over
that
there.
they were camps, but yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes. I hear you. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so but eventually it took a good couple decades or 3 decades for that model to start to be piloted more formally outside of the US, and then eventually took over, and now it's a formal part of the
Well established. Yes, it is well
yeah,
established now.
still kind
Yeah.
of taking off because it transitioned during COVID, but so far it seems to be moving the needle. Those are expensive events, though. Now we are in a time of prosperity at church, so I don't think that would be a concern necessarily. And if anything, many members would be expecting that some of those resources be put to good use.
Use.
Uh,
Yeah.
as we might have some news that we might get to cover later that are related to church finances,
Yeah.
but yeah, I do
And
wonder if
if
it will happen with the YSA.
and if we get into the specifics about the resources, then of course it's the children and the youth. So I mean, it's money well spent, well used. So it's all for the sake
Yeah,
of having this young men and women to have these experiences again, getting to know other kids, with similar, spiritual experiences, with similar, interests and upbringing, and then allow them to get together and to get to know each other, and then experience themselves their own, spiritual journey as well. So I
yeah.
think that's only fair.
I think on that point, maybe to close with that, uh, being a little bit devil's advocate, the the point you make on it's money well spent, I broadly agree, but with a caveat, I would say, which is, um, I do wonder. I mean, I fear a little bit that some of these more like impactful, kind of large scale events that we are putting together for the youth mainly, like FSY, like things like that are very very flashy, high budget. That they do produce like a high that is very evident and very very clear in the short term, but sustaining the impact of that remains, in my opinion, a bigger question to answer, and that time will tell. So whether it is kind of the best use of resources, I don't know. Probably it is, but I think it will turn out not to be unless it's coupled by a meaningful continued experience that you young people, young single adults or young adults in general are having when they engage at church, and that includes our Sunday worship programs. It includes all of the other kind of peripheral
Yeah,
experiences that we
but
provide.
I would like to interject a little bit, and what we've seen in the last couple of years is this very strong transition to family centered, right? And then kind of also having this, a bit divergent perspectives that, I mean, you don't want to reproduce something like FSY because that's not possible, right? That's why it happens every 2 years. I think they go every 2 years. They could go every year if they want, right?
Mm.
But what really matters is that what happens at home, right? If they have the opportunity to, study scriptures, pray, have their own spiritual experiences, fast with their family, or maybe, having the nourishment. Because again, church is not even 3 hours anymore. It's 2 hours, right? I mean, it's 2 hours. And then if nothing happens at home, then it will be just nonsense to think that there would be even a pinch of an option of having spiritual experiences, right, by yourself. Again, because you need, the support of your family and programs, and leaders that could help. But again, they would help as a
Yeah.
support net of what happens in the house, right, at home. And for teenagers, that is not that simple, right? I mean, and I
Yeah,
have
it's
my oldest is 10 years old, so I haven't even reached those perilous years, or those, challenging years. But what I can tell you is that it's not easy now, and I'm not expecting it to be easier in the future. So my wishful thinking is that at least I get a chance to, establish some simple but concrete, traditions at home, and then kids can have their own spiritual experiences, and they can build up their own testimonies. So when the time comes, right, FSY is not the biggest flash in their lives. It's just, the recognition of an accumulation of smaller experiences that they've been living by their own, in the safety of their homes and families, and, smaller community kind of thing.
Yeah, I broadly agree. Again, I think probably the point I was making before hints at the flip side of the emphasis you were making, like the family centeredness of church, kind of that pivot over the last few years is super important. Like for things to work out, it has to be there. I think unfortunately that puts some members at a disadvantage because families exist in many ways, and there are families that
In
simply
some
don't provide that
sizes,
support.
yes.
So, and that's when the second part, the one that I was trying to hint at, the church supported part of that quote comes in. And I do fear, and I might have made this point in previous episodes for longtime listeners, so sorry for repeating myself. I do fear and feel sometimes from my observation that with this emphasis towards family centeredness and church supportedness, we have focused maybe too much on the family centeredness part and forgetting that there's a support that church needs to provide. It's right there in the quote. And because most of the changes have been around kind of simplifying church and reducing that, sometimes we may err on too much on the side of, yeah, but families should be doing this. That's just my personal view. Ultimately, it's a combination of all those things that will make things work, right? And I think that FSY or these big conferences are part of that broader equation and set of opportunities and tools that the church, and ultimately we hope God, is trying to provide his children with. But great discussion. I never thought we could talk about young adults so much, especially as I'm gradually leaving that status of young behind.
I left it behind already, so I'm at peace with it. I don't
Me
have an
too.
issue with it
I'm,
anymore.
I'm pretending I haven't, but yeah. Again, we're no longer super young. We'll just put it that way. So, listeners, if we messed up
Yes,
with anything that we said, we want to hear your comments. So, contact at
please,
thisweekinmormons.com
please let
to
us
correct.
know.
Yeah, cool. Next one. Should we move on to this one? Is fun.
Yes, I love this one because, again, I'm not a super fan, but at the same time, I've been growing into this sports events and things that get people together. And as you may know, the Olympics are about to begin, right? I mean, they begin this weekend, and of course all the previous activities, and, Olympians getting into Paris and
Yeah.
getting into France, and, getting ready for their competitions and everything has been happening for the last couple of weeks. And if you're checking the news, of course, Simone Biles and all this wonderful sports people are coming together for this huge event that, as humanity, I would say, we've decided to have at peace, right, and to even stop war by the time this happens. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I always think of this thing as when I watch the Friday night movie with my kids. It's a good opportunity to spend some time with the kids and try to, show them, I don't know, different sports. I'm not a very sporty person, so I think it's, again, a good opportunity, to show that there are some other ways in life people engage in these activities, and see them, I don't know, perform wonderful wonders, right? And understanding that it's very difficult, but when you see them, it seems so easy and so natural. And when you try to do, I don't know, a flip or whatever they do, right, it's just incredibly difficult. And I applaud their commitment and their efforts, and, all these hours of training and preparation and whatnot. So I mean, it's just
Yeah.
great.
Fun days
And
ahead of us. Yeah.
yes, and
Um,
and because there's so many sports, then I think, and this is, again, another personal take, it allows you to see whatever you want. I mean, if you're not a fan of the prevailing sport in your country, then you've got hundreds of other sports you can watch. So
That's
I
something
mean,
for everyone. Yeah.
there's something for everyone, and that's, I think that's the other great thing about it.
It's like a
And
choose your own adventure type of sporting
yes,
event where,
yes,
yeah,
yes. So if you don't like one, then you have multiple happening at the same time, and then you gotta choose wisely your, I don't know, cable TV or, streaming platform provider, so it can give you the options you're interested in. So that being said, we've got, of course, a cohort, a group of Olympians that are also members of the church, and this is another great news for us as, as people,
it's a community.
as
Yeah.
a community, right? As those that are trying to gather Israel, right? And then what is interesting is that Bishop Gerard Cosset held, I would say, kind of a spiritual meeting, kind of a,
Like a devotional type
like a
of
devotional, yes, like a devotional with the Olympians, but also with the youth in France, I would assume in Paris,
Mm.
where Bishop Cosset, I think, is originally from. So there were two guests for this devotional. One is Brother Peter Vidmar, who was an Olympian in 1984. He won a couple of gold medals and then maybe some silver or bronze. Sorry if I'm making a mistake there, but I'm sure that he got a couple of gold medals. And an active church member. He's been serving in different callings. According to the article from Church News, he attended to all the Olympic Games since 1984. And then on,
Wow.
every 4 years, he attended all of them except for the 2016, because he was serving as a mission president in Australia. So he missed that because he was in a more important role as a mission president. So he had to skip that. But he attended first as a former Olympian, but also as the one of the members of the Young Men General Advisory Council. So that is another interesting thing, right? I mean, we've got an Olympian that is an active church member that has been serving in the church and has been an active member of the church, who also is actually currently member of the advisory council in the Young Men. So that is great, right? I mean, that's always good to hear, and I think those are this kind of uplifting experiences and stories to be told. What are your takes on the Olympics, Danny?
Well, I I really enjoy the Olympics. I don't have as much of a tradition of watching it. Like I do have a tradition of following football tournament, well, soccer tournaments for our American listeners.
It's
And
football. It's football.
yeah,
Don't say
yeah,
soccer. It's not
association
soccer.
football for the purists.
Yes.
But and I do come from a month-long kind of in super kind of intense period of watching two of these tournaments, the Euros in Europe and the Copa America,
Copa
which was
America.
played in the US.
Yes.
And the Copa America, really terrible times here in the UK, in the kind of early morning hours or just right after midnight. We did really poorly with Chile, but it was a fun tournament to watch. Well, actually, it wasn't that fun this year, but
No, it was
we
weird. It was weird.
the
It was
Euros
very
were
weird.
better. So I do
Yeah.
have that tradition, and I think the Olympics in my life have been kind of an add-on. But I do remember a few that were very significant for us as a country because we rarely do well. We don't have a super huge Olympian tradition, but during my youth years in Sydney 2000, the Chilean soccer team, association football team, went and played and got bronze medal. And it was the first Olympic medal that I ever saw my country getting, and on a sport that I actually follow. And it was super, super, super fun. And then in the next ones in Athens 2004, Chile got a few tennis medals, the gold medal for men's singles and also the doubles. Two gold medals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the next one we got silver. So there was a good generation there in the 2000s that represented Chile quite well in the Olympics, and I think that brought me closer to it. But yeah, I think sports. are kind of a reduction, a simplification, but a really fair representation as well of life in general. One of the reasons why I like uh, football slash soccer so much is because of all the metaphors, all of the kind of parallels that you can draw from football stories
Yes.
or from all of that into real life. And I truly, truly enjoy that. And I think that's true of most, if not all sports. So it will be a fun few months, and I do wonder who these other Olympians are. There's a nice list there in the church news for all of you to check. That are multiple disciplines. We have a lot of people in kind of track and kind of running and things like that, and it makes me think like maybe there are some missing there because I saw mainly people from the US. I think there was one from Australia called out. I was actually just Googling now to see if someone that I know is going to be there. There was a. This is public information. He's a public figure, so that's why I shared it. He was a member of my old ward from Samoa that moved to the UK because he's playing for the Saracens, a big rugby team in the rugby league here, and he's been playing professionally there for the last couple of years. His name is Theo McFarland. You can Google him. He's been playing for the Samoa national team, rugby team. He was in the Rugby World Cup in France last year. And he, like Samoa, but him as well, he was in the starting lineup to play against Chile in the Rugby World Cup. So
That's right.
I saw the
Yeah.
clips. He was like, this guy from my ward, that's how I first met him. He's playing the Rugby World Cup against my country. It was like the intersection was really, really odd. So, and Samoa will be playing rugby in the Olympics. So I was checking, is he there? And I found some news that he was made kind of national team captain, but I cannot confirm if it's for the Olympics. But church news, maybe you do your research, check there. There might be an extra one to add if
If
Theo
you haven't
is
included
there.
him, yes.
Yeah, he
Yes.
invited us a couple of years ago. He invited us in the bishopric to go to the semifinals that they played. They made it to the finals that year. We saw the first semifinal, and it was quite fun to watch. It was my first rugby game I ever watched there in the stadium and everything. Then he took us to the kind of VIP lounge.
Oh,
Super
that's
super nice
awesome. That's
guy.
super nice. Yes.
Yeah, incredible guy. So best of luck to him, regardless of whether he's in the Olympics or not. And like that, I wonder how many others might be there. I'm pretty sure from Latin America there might be a few, maybe in the local pages for the
There
Liahona.
could be, yes, there could be, yeah, but I'm not aware. And
Yeah.
again, it's just how you translate this information, or how you send this information,
Yeah.
and you make sure that it's accurate and clear and everything.
Did you ever
In
get any rumors or hear any rumors of famous sports people that would have been members of the church growing up or things like that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there were some, yes, but
It happens with musicians more. At least top of
more,
mind, I can think
yes,
of a few, but sports people, not sure.
not. I mean, sports people is kind of tricky, because if you haven't seen them at church, or someone that haven't seen them at church, then it's just urban legends, right?
Yeah.
It's not really there, right?
Well,
So
I do know a couple that come to mind. One is completely fake, I'm pretty sure, but there was a rumor that I heard growing up that Michael Owen, he was a forward for England. He's English.
okay.
He played in some of the top teams here. He played in Real Madrid in the 2000s. And there was a rumor that he was a member. Like, but that's completely fake, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
There was a brother in Chile that both of us know that in the 80s used to play for the Universidad de
Universidad
Chile team,
Chile,
the,
right?
the
Yes.
second biggest team in Chile. Uh, and yeah, I think he was a goalkeeper there
Yeah,
during
but it's not a
late
rumor.
80s.
That's true. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
that's
actually
true.
true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
factual.
But
And
he
there were like
didn't get into
articles.
the Olympics, anyways. He
No, no,
was
no.
just a
That's true.
professional soccer player, but that's it, right? Yes.
And eventually, I think he retired and he made a
Yes.
career in CS. So that's how
Yes.
things turn out. But yeah, I can't think of that many more. So best of luck
Bichi
for
Borgi. Bichi
Olympians.
Borgi.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Bichi Borgi as well. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Bichi
Bichi
Borgi's
Borgi.
been. He was a very popular soccer player in his time, and then he became a
Yeah,
coach, right?
yeah, a
A
coach.
football coach.
So he
Yes.
was actually a world champion in 1986 with Maradona. He was the substitute for Diego Maradona, whom listeners might know if you know a tiny bit about football. Allegedly the greatest player of all time for some. There's always going to be a debate between him, Pele, Messi now, and others. But Claudio Borgi is his name. He was
He
a
was
member of
born
the
and
church.
raised.
Yeah, in
Yes, he was born
Argentina.
and raised.
Yeah, and I remember an interview that they made to him in the mid or late 2000s when he was coaching Colo Colo, the team that I like in Chile, the biggest team. And he was interviewed. He was asked questions about the church, and he was like, "Yeah, it was a really nice childhood, like going to church and whatnot." But eventually, it was not like my lifestyle. I had some other interests and passions. He put it kind of that way. He's such a nice guy.
A very Argentinian answer for a
Yeah,
question like that.
he
Yes.
like he liked like barbecuing and asados and all of that, and probably some other things as well, alcohol and whatnot. But great guy. He's a TV pundit now, and I regularly listen to him and his program. So for Argentinian listeners, you know who that is, and Chileans for sure, and many others from Latin America, because he coached some of the biggest teams there. He coached Boca Juniors, allegedly one of the biggest, if not the biggest team in
If not the
Argentina.
biggest, right?
Yeah,
The
the
same
most
with Colo
popular.
Colo, right? Yes.
Exactly,
Yes.
and he coached the Chilean national football team. So great guy. I don't know if he'll ever hear this. I do remember some pictures of him wearing the BYU kit because the BYU football team went to Chile once around that same time,
That
late
was
2000s.
2010
Yeah,
or
20,
kind of.
2007, 2008, I reckon. And they played a friendly game against Colo Colo, the biggest team. So there's some. There was a photo up, and we see BT Borgi wearing the BYU t-shirt. So that's really cool. The
No,
Y.
that's really cool. Yeah.
Super. Next,
So
what's in?
thinking about this same, famous-ish kind of news, we would like just to mention this viral video that's been around for some couple of days now of a missionary that is coming home. I think he's in the airport because his family is kind of picking him up after his mission, and he's delivering a Book of Mormon to Post Malone, the owner, I think, of a fast food restaurant in Utah. I would it's
Oh,
in my
really?
understanding, yes, yes. So Post Malone is this musician that is very, very popular. I mean, I would dare to say that it's really, really popular.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this
Top tier.
missionary, this returning, and I like to use this returning missionary, invites him to read the Book of Mormon and to accept, a copy of it. And then Post Malone accepted it. So that was great. And I mean, if you've seen the video or you haven't, then if you find it, then you will notice his face of happiness and joy about having the opportunity to share the Book of Mormon with Post Malone. I mean, it's not my type of artist anymore. Again, I'm too old for Post Malone. Probably, if I hear a song, I might not recognize him. However, I think it's just significant that a young returning missionary is still kind of motivated and willing to share the Book of Mormon and the gospel with anyone, right? Being famous or not, right? So I think it's just a meme, but at the same time, I think it's just good to see this as don't be shy, don't shy away your light, and then don't leave opportunities that are presented in front of you to
Yeah.
share the gospel. So that's
Yeah, all credit to Post Malone for being super nice on that video. If you haven't seen it, just look it up, like Post Malone Mormon missionary or something like that, and you'll find it on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, or many news articles that have featured it. And yeah, the way he responds is super chill. He's like wearing his pajamas and kind of going through security in the
here.
airport.
Everyone wears his pajamas on a daily basis, Dan. So I mean, I don't know. Yes.
Yeah, it's a thing I believe, but yeah, he's super gracious, and I doubt that will lead to anything, but I'm pretty sure that Elder will have that story to tell forever, and in our kind of church lore, in our church culture, these things really stick. We love to see that type of stuff and make those connections. I remember that. um I think a Photoshop picture of years ago, kind of pre-AI era, of Snoop Dogg with the Book of
Yes.
Mormon. Do you remember that one from like
Yes.
the
With the
mid
missionaries.
2000s as
Yes.
well?
Yeah.
And it was usually on April Fool's Day will come up and things like that. But yeah, we love that
We
type of
love
stuff.
that. Yes.
Yeah, and
Yes.
and, and it's cool. Like I get it, and it's good to see kind of musicians that might have a stereotype for being rude or kind of rock star or type of attitude, to just be nice, nice people. So again, the only thing I do know about Post Malone, other than I'm not a fan of kind of his official music, is that he has made some pretty good covers of kind of 90s rock
Yes.
that
From
people,
Alice in Chains.
yeah, Alice in
Yes.
Chains, Nirvana, and that's more of my type of music. And yours, Danny, yeah, for listeners.
Yes. Absolutely.
Actually, for those that missed some of our previous episodes with Danny, both of us have a rock band, and we've had it for over 10 years now. We released good 3, 4 albums, and it's all on Spotify. It's called Grand Capitals, and a lot of the inspiration for our music comes from that era, from that alternative rock and
Definitely.
all of that. And I had this image of Post Malone being this kind of trap, urban, auto-tuned type of music that I didn't even bother listening to. But then when he came out with this covers and him actually singing with a pretty nice voice, I was quite impressed. And I was like, it's great to see that there's musicianship there. And I was glad that my prejudice was kind of broken
Taken
up.
away, yes.
And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm not going to listen to his stuff, but respect. And I should probably be a bit more open-minded and respectful of that
A bit
type
more
of music.
respectful, I think, about the artists, not current artists, even though they're not your favorite flavor. At least you get, some respect
Yeah.
for what they're doing.
It's like the Apostle Paul said, prove all things, hold fast to that which is good. If I'm paraphrasing the King James Version correctly, I know that a little
Correctly.
bit better in Spanish. Well, thank you, Post Malone, then, for popping up in our Twim episode.
So we've got another very interesting piece of news article that is related to Elder and Sister Uchtdorf that were doing a visit to Central Europe, particularly Germany, where they are originally from. And I think it's just interesting to take some minutes on it because they visited very unusual places for leaders of the church, and I hope you can kind of follow my train of thought here. But I mean, usually church leaders would go to the first branch or the first ward or the first organized stake, right? They would meet with local leaders. They would meet with probably some, people from social, organizations, right? But the Ugdorfs visited some of their childhood places, right? So one
Mhm.
of the first places they were living, they paid some respects and tributes to people that died during the Holocaust. Um, one of the first missionaries that died in Germany as well. So I think the
Mm.
visit was very interesting in that respect. I'm not saying they didn't get together with the local leadership or members of the church, but I'm saying that they also visited places that are historically significant, both for themselves but also for the wider historical audience, right?
Mm.
Some of the places that we've got here in the piece are Germany, Frankfurt, Berlin, Hamburg, Alpine, the Alpines from the German speaking side, and then the Czech Slovak missions visited they had a conference in Switzerland, in Zurich, and in Dresden, also in Germany. Um, so I think that's fantastic. I mean, it's again showing the importance, I think, for church leaders to acknowledge, these historical places as also places that we should remember. And if we narrow it down to the minimum, these are also spiritual places to be reminded of, right? I mean, the first place where you were living when the missionaries knock on your door, or your first house, or the place where you started, developing your testimony, particularly for a member of the quorum of the 12 apostles. It is a spiritual place as well, right? It is. I'm not saying as a place to worship, but at least for them, for their own personal experiences, is a significant place to visit and to be able to share it. And they've been able to share some of the pictures and some of the visits through their account in Instagram. So I think it's just great, again, for the members of the church and church adjacent and people that know him, uh, to get to see these places. Okay, not only from general conference talks, but the actual image of the place where they used to live. So I don't know what you
Yeah.
think about it, Danny.
Thanks for bringing this one up. It's a bit different in tone than some of the previous ones we've covered today. Um, and even though at face value it's like, oh, an apostle visited a place, right? It might not seem significant. I think the places he does visit, if we take a minute maybe to think about why he visited it and why he is deciding to kind of shared this as part of kind of a coherent narrative, and it becomes a church news article and an Instagram and Facebook post and all of that. I think that there is a purpose that is not maybe super expressly stated there. In some cases, yes, like he's visiting his childhood home for some things, but some other things I do take as, there are so many parallels that tend to be drawn with that era that sometimes are uncomfortable, sometimes are gratuitous or kind of extreme, but more often than not these days do resonate with a lot of the social, political, even economical trends that we see around the world, that I think there's significance on revisiting that time and to understand the impact that social prejudice and so many other things have caused. I want to I believe, and this is just my personal interpretation of it, I want to believe that part of the reason for that visit on his side is to kind of showcase that a little bit. There's one specific visit that he made that is featured in the article, that for those that are probably a bit more like church history savvy, I don't want to use that word, but more acquainted with church history beyond what's commonly kind of heard within the walls of our classrooms, might know about, and for others might be new, which is the story of, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Helmut Hubener, a 17-year-old that was executed, a church member that was executed for his resistance to the Nazi regime during that time. I don't know, Danny, if you've heard about his story.
I don't
Uh,
have the specifics about it.
it's
I won't dare to.
Yeah, I don't know all of the details either, so I run the risk of making some factual mistakes here. But there's a lot of meat to that story, and a lot of history that is kind of uncomfortable to reckon with. And the part of the context of his execution is that the historical record indicates that he was excommunicated from the church, partly allegedly because of, at that time, much of the church leadership there being very much affiliated with or supportive of the Nazi regime, right? So his opposition was kind of commingled with that and with his church kind of standing, and he was not only executed by the Nazi regime but also excommunicated and lost his membership status. My understanding is that retroactively his membership was reinstated later on, decades later or something like that. Please, fact checkers, send us emails. But it is a tough story to learn about, and I think that but it's a well documented one, and that does make me think as well, in very real terms and maybe uncomfortable terms for some, to reflect on our church today, right? If at the local level things like that happen, and if we believe in a God that lets things like that happen while at the same time coexist with or claim of being the church of God, right? The kingdom, the restored kingdom of God on earth. How do we reconcile both? It's not an easy conversation, but I do take the challenge of, by knowing that things like that did occur, things that sometimes we might brush up and might not be part of our kind of our Sunday school manuals. It does make me think what things could happen today that might go over our heads, thinking that we're doing it just right, when we're when actually we're acting based on
On
prejudice
prejudice and racism, or
or
yes.
things like that. So I take it as a call to action to be introspective as a church member, as a leader in the capacity that I have now or that I may have in the future. And I hope we all take it that way as well. For those that want to learn more about Helmut Hubener, I know there are some good resources that I cannot mention now because I don't have them top of mind, but we'll look to put some of those in the in the show notes for those that would be interested in that.
Danny, we're reaching the hour mark, so I think it's time for us to kind of wrap it up to conclude our session today. However, we've got a couple of news that should be in the Patreon take. So any of you that would love to have the opportunity to hear about them, we invite you to participate and to be part of the Patreon take. It's only a few bucks a month, and then it's just helping the mission of sharing this news articles and having this opportunity to share with you our thoughts and ideas about them. We're going to talk about something related to another class action um, case over the tithing in the church. So we think it's a very interesting piece of news that we're going to discuss further on in detail. So we
Another
invite you
very
to.
happy topic. Yeah,
Yes, yes,
but a meaty one. Yeah.
yes, and definitely with with this faith promoting position, and we're both active members of the church, and we all want that these kinds of things get resolved and go through
Yeah.
the right channels, and they find their solutions for them.
Yeah, we're here to
So
talk about everything. So join us in Patreon then. The conversation will be fun. And we've loved having you with us today. Danny, it's been a pleasure.
it's been a pleasure too. It's always fun to have this talks. Georgia, we missed you. We hope to have you next international edition with us, and all the best in your recovery.
All the best. And a shout out to all the other hosts of TWIM. We invite you to subscribe to our social media channels, to contact us at contact@thisweekinmormons.com, and join us in Patreon. The conversation, I will keep going there. All right, Danny, let's jump into there. And goodbye, everybody. Take care. Thank you for joining us today.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.